Hey, welcome back to Skid's Garage. Today we're going to service the X5M. We're also going to do some stuff to the 180 as well. We've got a drift event on in 2 weeks' time up at Queensland Raceway. It's the send-off of short track. So for those in the know, the short course is going and they're doing one final send-off on there. 50 drivers, mostly an invite-only event, so it should be pretty hot. So we've got a few things to do to the 180 before we're ready to go. We need to give it a service. We've got to fix the hydro because last time it sort of pulled out the floor a bit, just got to reinforce the mount a bit more. We've also got these new gauges to go in. We're gonna run the gauges again. We're gonna switch back to gauges from the digital Defi display. I did try the Defi display out because a few of my friends had them, but what I found is when you're driving, and you just want to have a quick look at what's actually going on with your gauge, the Defi display, because it is digital, you really need to sort of concentrate for a split second, look at the number of, for example, your oil pressure or your water temp, and your brain just needs to think, okay, 80, 90 degrees, whatever oil pressure, 20, 30 PSI, 50, whatever the rating is. Your brain needs to think about it for a second and go, okay, it's that temperature is too hot, that sort of fits inside, and you want to make sure that obviously everything's intact, but having to think about what the number is and then work out if that's a good or bad thing, or if you need to pull in, or if there's a problem with the car, your brain just doesn't react quick enough. Whereas having like your analog gauge, you can obviously see where your number is on your temperature, and you know exactly that, hey, that's fine. So you can just have a quick glance to it and go, yep, all good. Whereas a digital one, you sort of need to think about it for a bit. So with the gauges we're going to put in, we've got these ones here. We're going to run water temp, oil pressure, oil temperature, and boost. Yeah, the other thing I need to do is organize tires. So we need to get a few more tires as well, but let's get started, shall we? All right, pretty straightforward stuff. We've got our 530 Edge, new filter removal tool for the sump, already taken off the oil cap, so the oil flows out easier. Let's get to it. Alright, so that was a quick guide on how to service your X5M in 1 or 2 minutes flat. So now we need to take it for a quick drive, get it up to temp. Obviously there's no dipstick, so we got to use the computer dash display to basically see how much oil's in it and make sure that it's all full. Alright, so we've just been for a bit of a drive. Let's just go vehicle info, vehicle status, engine oil level. You can see it's full, so we're good to go. Alright, before we can get working on the 180, do want to give it a bit of a wash. You can see it's pretty grubby from last time on the track. It's also just very dusty as well. So just going to grab the gurney and give it a clean. It's just looking mighty shiny, just letting it dry out. While we're waiting for it to dry, let's give the tyre shop a call and see if we can organise some tyres.
This is Jeff.
Jeff, it's Arif. How are you, mate?
Arif, I'm good.
How'd you go with the tyres, man?
Yeah, I can get you sick. When do you need them?
On Monday, so 1 week.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah?
Monday's good, 6. Okay, I've only got 4 down here. I'll get 2 more from Brisbane. I'll make sure we've got them here for you Monday.
All right, I'll see you on Monday.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, buddy. Bye.
Bye.
How good's that? Tyres sorted. And yeah, now what we got to do is get that sorted. All right, so water temp gauge. On my last 180, I had it up here where the factory water temp gauge is, because that doesn't work, because obviously, you know, CA-RB25. I'm gonna put this sort of just there, just so you know it's next to the tacho, and it's in the spot for the factory gauge. Obviously, whenever you're looking straight, whenever you're looking at the tacho, you can have a quick glance at this and see what your temps are at. Otherwise, the thought was to put them across the top above the defi, but having 4 gauges across there, it's just a bit too many, and it can lose concentration just trying to read obviously 4 at once. So I'm going to start off with the water temp here, and then the boost, the oil pressure and the oil temp I'll sort of figure out. I've got the wiring for my tacho here, and I'm just going to piggyback off that for the power for the water temp gauge. I've just run my multimeter on there and figured out what's what, so let's get to it. All right, so it's been a week since we've worked on the 180, getting the gauges put in. We did have to stop because my soldering iron is no longer soldering, so we didn't even get to put the first one in. We worked out where we were going to get power and whatnot from, but couldn't even solder a wire. We found the receipt, it's still under warranty, so we'll head off to Bunnings very shortly and go grab a replacement soldering iron. The other thing that happened, I was on my way home from work yesterday, gave it some beans, and the X5 did a coil pack. Good thing is they're not that expensive, readily available as well. So Repco have them, they're only about $70, but because this is a common occurrence, have a look at this. So if we open up the boot here, I actually keep a spare in the boot for when I'm on adventures and stuff happens. So I'll put this one in, and then today we'll go to Repco, buy another one and pop that back in the boot. So let's get this done first up, and then we can go to Bunnings, swap over the soldering iron, go to Super Cheap, grab an oil filter for the 180 and Repco for a coil pack, and then we can get stuck back into the 180, because, well, not this time next weekend, but in 6 days time, we're going drifting. So I have a device called a Kali, which plugs into the OBD2, and that lets you read engine codes. It lets you code things like how long you want your lights to stay on for and your mirrors and stuff. But on the way home yesterday, when it gave me a check engine and started carrying on, I could limp it home, but I just checked the Kali, misfiring cylinder 1, which it's pretty good because it actually tells you where it's misfiring, not like Nissan stuff that, you know, if you get a misfire, you got to test every single coil pack and whatnot. So cylinder 1 is the left-hand side at the front here. There's not too much stuff in the way. I'll just put a light down there, but it is just there. So we're just going to remove the intercooler fluid reservoir, and then that'll be pretty easy to get to. So let's get on to that. All right, she's all done. All right, just been to Bunnings and Super Cheap. New soldering iron, box of parts, oil filter. Got me a new basket for the garage. Also found a wild Alessandro in my travels. Let's get to it. So we've got the gauge wired in. Let's just see if it works. There we go. What does this button do? Oh, that white background look. Gotta figure out what this button on the back does. The manual says nothing. Good old China. Set the keys is what it says. Function display, the blue light, the red light. So there's a button there. Oh, there we go. So that sets, if we hold it down, it sets peak. Oh, and then you can adjust where you want your peak temperature to be. So I reckon 100 degrees. What do you reckon? No, he's not listening. How do we get it out of this peak setting? Oh, just don't do anything. So this is the illumination wire. So let's just see what it does if we give it some power. Oh, it goes red and white. That white is very hard to see during the day, whereas that's a lot easier to see. I think we'll leave the illumination off. At head on, for me, I can't really see that, but like at night, that does look pretty cool. But we mostly drift during the day. What if we can change the color of the illumination? Oh, red. So I'm happy just to keep that illumination on all the time now if it's going to be red, because then that is easy to see in the day and at night. All right, so we've got the gauge mounted in, all hooked up, nice in front and center as well, which is good. We've tucked the wiring through the factory aircon vent. Obviously we don't use that. Got the excess there. Now to do the fun part, run it to the engine bay and hook it up. All right, I'm pushing it through. I found a hole, and if I push it through the hole, you got it? Okay, pull it through the hole. Keep going, all the way. Keep going, and stop there. Perfect. All right, so we just got to remove the standard Defi water temp gauge. If the radiator cap's still on it, hopefully it doesn't piss out too much. What size do you reckon this is? 7. Let's see if it works. Come down here. Yeah, rad. All right, so we've found our power wires to run the gauges for that are going to sit up there. Accessory on the left, earth in the middle, and constant 12 volt on the right there. I don't know why Nissan chose to use these colors, but if you're ever wiring in an S13, this is the factory plug for the head unit, I believe. And they're the 3 wires there. They could change if it is yours, so I wouldn't go by colors. Always make sure you check with a good old multimeter beforehand. Boost gauge all mounted up. The great thing about these gauges, they have a piggyback system similar to your Deffies as well. So all you got to do is run power to one, and then the piggyback cable goes to the next, and you run a piggyback cable to the next one there. So now we're just going to get our oil pressure and oil temp done. All right, so we've got oil draining out of the sump. I've just pulled the trash tyres off the rear, put some fresh ones on. These are going to the tyre shop tomorrow with those ones over there. We're just gonna put in the fittings for the oil pressure, oil temp. I think it's in here. Yep. Yep, and oil temp there. So we're just gonna remove the old Defy fittings and put those ones in. Okay, so we've got our oil pressure and oil temp senders into the relocation kit. Pretty easy stuff. It's just a screw in. I've run the wiring. Now we're just gonna put an oil filter back in, fill it up with oil, hook up the wiring, and then test it and make sure it's all good. Now RBs love oil, so a common practice is when you're filling them up on the dipstick is to go to the notch. I'll just show you what that means. So you've got your full level just there. I tend to go to the notch. As long as you've got a decent like catch can and breather setup, it won't push out too much oil, and having that extra, I guess, half a litre or so of oil in the sump just will avoid any starvation issues. So that's why I always go to the notch. It's something I've always done, and touch wood, it hasn't failed me so far. All right, so we've got all our gauges working. We've got our water temp, we've got our oil pressure, we've got our oil temp and our boost. So super happy with how they came out. And like I said before, I do prefer the gauges over the Defy guy. I've got him just showing fuel pressure and voltage, but otherwise we're all good for Saturday. All right, so as you can see, we've got all the gauges done, we've got our service done, we've serviced the X5, fixed the coil pack on the X5, which wasn't the plan. I've got tyres in the boot of the X5 just there. I'm all ready to go. Super excited to go drifting on Saturday at the short track. It is going to be the last time that they do ever drift there. So I guess I'll see you there. Thanks for tuning in to Skid's Garage.